Hi everyone. Today we'll talk about React and what are pure functions in React, how are they used in React, how is React based upon them. We'll also talk about side effects, what is the correct way to cause side effects in a code base, and what is local mutation. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You a pure what is a pure function, use effect. These are pretty important React based interview questions. So if you know all of these, then it's definitely a good thing. So we'll start with pure functions because to understand these side effects and use effect and all of this, we need to understand pure functions first. Okay. So what are pure functions in React? Or maybe in general, in computer or programming languages, what are pure functions? Okay, so let's assume we have this equation y is equals to 2x. Okay, now what do you think would be the output for x is equals to 2? So if x is 2, then y would always be 4. Would you agree with me on this thing? No matter wherever in the code base, in line first, in line 19th, or line 20th, 40th, anything, if I put x is equals to 2 and call this function with, then y would always be 4, right? Okay. And there would be no external state change, right? So basically, pure functions are functions that mind their own business. Pure functions, uh, for any input that you give, whatever the output is returned on the first instance, the same output would be returned on every instance whenever that function is called with that same input. So for an input, same output is returned always. Always is the important thing over here. No matter when, where, how, and how many times. Okay. Also, pure functions do not cause any side effects. What are side effects? Basically, side effects in React means when we try to communicate with external sources. For example, if we have to do a database change, we have to call an API or we have to change any files. So these are not, native website things that we have to do. But these are external things. We need to contact external entities for these things. So these are side effects, and these are known as side effects, which happen on the side. So a pure function is something which does not, um, which does not support side effects, or if a function does not have any side effects, or and for any input the output is same, so that function can be called as a pure function. For example, see this function over here. This function takes a number and returns its double. So whenever I will pass 2 over here, output would always be 2. So this is an example of a pure function. So how React and pure functions are related? Basically, React follows the concept of purity. React assumes whatever component that we create is always pure, which means it does not cause any side effects, and uh, uh, and it always returns a predictable constant output. For example, so React assumes components are always pure. For example, see this function. This is our main component where we are trying to call this component. Okay, so let's just see the recipe component right now. So this is our recipe component for whatever drinkers the props is given to us. Our component would always return this JSX. This JSX is constant over here. As you can see, like this would not change, right? Only the whatever the input value is, that input value would be put over here. For example, if it was 2 over here, so 2 would be put over here, 2 would be put over here, and it would be returned. So whenever I would put 2, I would give 2 as a prop, the output would always be the same, right? Also, over here, it is not interacting with any global variable, it is not calling any API, so which means no side effects are also happening. So we can safely say that this is a pure component. And by practice or by theory, if we build all the components as pure components, then uh, like a large number of bugs that we encounter can be easily removed. But it's just a theory. Okay. So if this is a React pure component, I hope it is clear. Uh, what else I can tell you? So yeah, this was really it. Okay. So now if this is a React pure component, so what about impure React component? Okay. So how would we classify if a component is pure or impure? See, if it is performing side effects while rendering. What what do we mean by this thing? See, this is our website page. Okay. Now React is trying to render the component. It is a list of some items. Okay, so it is trying to rendering. Now React says like, bro, when I am rendering, no side effects can happen. You cannot call any external variable and try to change it, or you cannot call any API and try to do stuff with that. While I'm rendering, just let me render it. Nothing else should be going on. But in an impure component, while React is trying to render these lists, for example, it rendered first component, it rendered second. Now, during this phase, the component would try to access a global variable, let's say count, and it would try to increment it over here because we had written the logic over here. So this would result in bugs, which is not acceptable by React. So an impure React component would do that. And also, if we do this, the output would be unpredictable. Sorry, unpredictable. Let me give you an example for this. Okay. See, we have this function over here. Okay. So, can I remember? Okay, so maybe we have this function over here. Okay, now counter is a global variable. See, it's a global variable, and our component is trying to access this global variable. If it is trying to access this global variable, if it is trying to access a variable which is not in its own local scope, which means it is trying to, contact with an external entity, which means this is a side effect. Okay. Now, while React is rendering, it is trying to uh, increment the counter, which is a global variable. So this is a side effect happening. Okay. Now this output would not be same. See, initially the output would be 1. Then we try to again call it, then output is 2. Then if we again try to call it, then output would be 3. So like for what was the pure function, that output should be same. So counter was, if initially counter was 0, so it should always be 0. But in this, it was first it's coming 1, then 2. Now for example, if now in between we try to do something else, any other component tried to call counter and did something on it, and then we try to again call this component greet, now counter would be something else. Right. So now the output of the function is unpredictable. We don't know what would come as an output. It is a surprise for us. So this is a impure component where the output is unpredictable and side effects are happening while rendering. See, side effects can happen and side effects are bound to happen because we just don't want to show a static page. We have to show a dynamic website. So we need to call we need to call APIs, we need to interact. But during rendering phase, we cannot do all of that. This is what React wants to say. Okay. So React's rendering should be completely pure. Every JSX which is returned from React should be predictable. We should not encounter any surprises in that thing. Okay. Okay. So if this was pure components, impure components, how they are used in React and what is their role in React. So okay. So now what we cannot, communicate with external, entities, but we need to make a website dynamic, right? So we need to have, communicate with external things. So how can we do that? At some point we have to interact, right? So how to handle this? So let's just talk about two approaches. For example, let's say we have to fetch this API over here. Okay, this API we need to fetch it. So one way is we would directly call it over here. See, it's a normal React function. It is normal JavaScript function which returns a JSX. And above it, we can write the function logic. It is completely normal, right? So, so I'm saying, okay, what we would directly, cause the side effect. So, can we do that? Let's just. What do you think we would encounter in this? What do you think? What problems we could encounter in if we try to write this kind of code? See, first problem is we are directly trying to call fetch. We have not, for example, if the component is rendered first time, fetch would be called. Now, for example, now the fetch function would be called. Now in the dot, then if we try to change any state, like if we did like set toys to response dot JSON, then what would happen? The component would be re-rendered because there was a state update. Now when now component would be rendered, which means fetch would again be called. Then fetch would again update the state. Then component would again render. Then fetch, if the component is re-rendered, fetch would again be called. Then fetch would again set the state, and the component would again be re-rendered. So this leads to an infinite loop of render, which is not a good thing. Uh, Also, second thing is the rendering phase. When React is trying to render this JSX element, you are trying to do perform a side effect over here, which is not allowed in React. You cannot perform a side effect while React is rendering the JSX. So, and what is the third issue? Third issue is basically API spamming. See, in the infinite loop of rendering, you will again and again call the API. Okay, let's say you just have this code and there was no infinite renders. Okay, so what would happen is you cannot control how many times you have to call. For example, in now if we go down the code and somewhere else state is changed, but that state did not have to do anything with this, but the component re-renders, then this API would again be called, even though it did not have to do anything with that state. So these are the problems if we use a fetch thing or if we try to do side effects directly. Infinite rendering, which is side effects during rendering, and spamming. No control over how many times we can cause the side effects. Okay. So now, what is the solution for this? Okay. So now we need to think of the solution because we have to cause the side effects. So what is the good practice of trying to achieve this thing without getting into bugs or any problems? So one of the solutions we have is the use effect. Use effect hook. What is use effect hook? Use effect hook is a very important and very powerful hook that React provides us. What does it do? It basically gives us the ability to effectively and efficiently call the side effects, cause the side effects in the component without leading into and without getting into any issues that we discussed. Okay. How what is the format of this? Okay, so it basically contains two parts. One is the function part and one is the dependency part. What is the function part? Function is basically the in the function part we try to add the side effect logic. It contains the side effect function which we need to run, and then we have a dependency array. Dependency. Okay, now we'll have to discuss about dependency. So basically, a normal, uh, use effect would be like this. Oh, you know what happened? Initially, I had this point, okay, and I thought it is pretty good because I didn't like this normal one. But now I got to know that we have this font also, which is like old like thing, and I realized that this is much better than all this. Now I wrote all this. Now I tried to change it, but it was taking too much time, so I thought, let it be. But I from next time I'll use this. So this is a use effect hook. It has a function thing and a dependency. What would function contain? Function would contain a side effect logic, side effect function like fetching an API, and then it would optionally, sometimes we do not put it, but it is a good practice if we write a cleanup function. We'll discuss about all these. First, let's just try to focus upon the dependency array. Okay, now dependency array. One, sometimes, first of all, let me tell you what is the issue, what are some of the common mistakes that someone could make. Sometimes people don't even write the dependency array, which means they just define the use effect, define the use effect like this. And this is also like they do not even put these, like not even, yeah, so they do not put this dependency array thing, which is part of use effect. We would not run into any kind of syntax error that you have not put this. It is okay, you can put, you can decide like I do not want to have a dependency array. Like if you put it, if you give an empty dependency array, then it means something. But if you do not give the array with me, then what does it mean? If you do not give the dependency array, which means this thing is use effect is ended just over here, only till over here it is. Then what happens is, this means you the use effect would run on every re-render. If any state which is not related to your side effect is changed, component would be re-rendered, and on every re-render, this thing would run, which is same as an infinite rendering or the issue that we discussed over here. So not providing a dependency array to use effect is not a good practice and should not be used. Only use it when it's really necessary. Okay. Now, okay. Now, what does it mean that if we have an empty dependency array? Empty dependency array means use effect would run on the initial render. For example, if this is our browser and this is again a component. So what would happen is basically first the component DJSX would we have in this, it would be rendered on the screen. While the component is rendering, use effect would not be running. Okay. So it would just, first of all, it would just render the component, okay, the JSX element. Okay, now once it has been rendered, the browser would update the DOM accordingly. Now once all this thing has happened, then use effect would run, and if the dependency array is empty, then it would run only once on the initial render. Then afterwards in the component, if any state changes or anything, any other side effect, DOM manipulation, or anything is happening, it would not have any effect on this. It would not run again. Okay, so we with this we can try to control our, uh, how many times our API is getting called and when it is getting called. Okay. Now another dependency array thing is where we have some dependency. See, what would happen is initially it would be rendered, the user file would run on the initial render. Now, when would it run next? Whenever this dependency changes. For example, over here, if we had a dependency of maybe toys. Now, whenever this toys thing would be changed, for example, if in the component I do toys plus, a ball. So the status changed. Now toy state was previous state plus the toy state now. So it has changed. So this would run again, and maybe it changes the color or something. Okay. So this was about user effect. No, this was not. We would see its working in very deep, so that if anybody tries to question you about use effect, you are able to answer each and everything. What are side effects? How are they used? Pure functions and how they affect them, and how use effect solves the thing of side effects and pure functions, and all of that. So we should be able to answer all of this, and um, having the knowledge of all of these also helps us in becoming a good programmer. And I should not breathe so much. I'm sorry. Yeah. So next thing, yeah. Now working. How if we have a use effect in our code, how would it work? So initially, what would happen? React would render the UI on the browser, on the browser page. Then what would happen is browser will update the DOM. It would update the DOM according to the newly rendered component. Now, once all these things is completed, now use effect is instantiated, and then all the running of it happens. Now, if any kind of dependency changes, then cleanup function is run. It is unmounted, and then it is refaced, and then it is updated. Oh no, it is not unmounted. If dependency change, then the cleanup function is run, and then the side effect function is again called, and then it is updated. Not unmounted. I'm sorry. Okay, so if you know, these are the this is the life cycle of a React component, right? And this is super important. And this basically okay. So functional component thing is relatively newer in React. Initially, when React was developed, class-based components were used, and they had these functions: componented, mount, update, and unmount, and all of these. And developers actually wrote these things. Uh, Nowadays, React has functional thing, and it has abstracted so much, and it has made our life so easier. But the senior developers who wrote code in that class-based thing, that are genius people. So, but still we need to know about those class-based components and how did they work, and what was the the behind the screen scenes, because it would help us understanding the core working of React. Okay, so whenever we create a component and we try to render it on the screen, what happens behind these scenes? The React component goes into three life cycle methods. First is the mounting phase, then is the updating phase, and last is the unmounted phase. What happens is, in the mounting phase, whenever the React component is created, it is mounted on the DOM tree. Like it is, yeah, I guess. Like it is mounted, okay? Which means now every anything that changes in it would be reflected, okay? So yeah, see, whenever we try to create, the component, React updates the DOM and all of the, and it mounts it upon the tree. Okay. Now, second is the updating phase. Whenever any state change occurs, any side effect is caused, the component is updated with all the new props, new states, or anything like that, and the component and its parts are all updated, and the DOM is again refreshed, again updated, and this is the updating phase, updating life cycle. Okay, and lastly, it is unmounted. For example, if you uh, like if you go to any other page in our website or anything like that happens, the component has to be unmounted so that a new component can be placed in that position. So that is the unmounted phase. And whenever this phase is reached, at least the component is now out of the DOM. See over here. This is the picture which is available in React docs, I guess. I think I took from there only. Yeah, so see over here render phase. Pure and has no side effects. It can be paused, aborted, or restarted by React. See, the render phase is absolutely pure and it does not have any side effects because it has to have a predictable data which can be shown on the screen. Now, what do we mean by it can be paused, aborted, or restarted by React? Why can we do this? Okay. See, pure functions have always predictable data and it would always have same output. Okay, and it has no strings attached, no side effects, and all of that. If a function is like this, it can stop or pause or abort it at any point of time because it would not cause any other, bugs or anything like that. So that is why we say that it can be paused or aborted at any time. Okay. Now, when does our use effect works? It works in the commit phase. When the commit phase happens. So what happens is initially when the mounting phase occurs or the mounting part is happening, the component is mounted and use effect function is run with an empty array, which means the component is mounted on the DOM tree and the use effect function, if it has an empty dependency array, then it is initially run. Okay, during the commit phase. Okay, not during the rendering phase. Component is mounted, the UI has been rendered. Now commit phase start and the what do we say? The use effect function is run, and whatever the side effect function it has to perform, it tries to perform it. Now, if any of the dependencies further changes in the code, then during the updating part of the commit phase, uh, the side effect function inside the use effect is again run and all the states are updated and the final result is updated on the DOM tree and the UI reflects that. Now, if the component is unmounted means we have to remove it from the DOM tree and now another component would be placed on it on that part. Okay, so during this phase, what would happen to use effect? Use effect, I told you it had an optional return cleanup function. So this runs when we are in the unmounting phase. Okay, so if I try to unmount any component, so if we have a cleanup function over here, then React would run this function and clear all the things that was there in the tree and then move to the next part. Okay. uh, if you would ask when is this necessary, why like generally we do not generally we do not write cleanup functions, but when do we write it? These are written, for example, in set timeout things. uh, if we have a set timeout in our user, my headphones are saying that they have low battery. I don't know if it would run till the end of the video. I don't want to re-record. Should I just a second, guys? Hello. Yeah. Hello. 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 Yeah. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. And I don't know if my voice is audible or clear or not, but just bear with me. It's 2 minutes are left of this video. So if we have, I'll try to speak a bit louder. So if we have set timeout in our React function, okay. I think I told this in some of videos. So, but it's okay. And it like sets the timer for 300 seconds, and it tries to run this for 300 seconds. But before 300 seconds have passed, the this function has to be unmounted on that. But the timer is still running. If we do not clean up this thing, then after 300 seconds have passed, or whatever the function was inside it, it would run. But we had already unmounted the component, and this function should not have been running. So to prevent all this thing, we try to add a cleanup function where we clear the time. Okay. So this was how use effect is working and happens all of the things. So next we'll talk about local state mutation. What do we mean by local state mutation, and what is the how is it used? Okay. So pure functions say that we cannot use any variable which is not in your own local scope, like any global variable or any function which is or any variable which is defined in any other function. Like anything which is not inside your own local scope, you cannot use them. Pure functions say this. But if we try to uh, you know uh, uh, initialize a local variable and try to use it in the component, then is it okay? Can we do this? Yes. How and why? This can happen with the help of local state mutation. Local state mutation means if we can which means if we initialize or use a already initialized local variable in the components, then it is completely fine, and it would not run into any error, and it would not be classified as any uh, impurity. Okay. So why do we focus so much upon purity? Because it allows us to use the function anywhere. For example, see a pure function. If you give in any say one kind of input, then the output would always be same in any kind of situation, right? So that means that it can be used anywhere, right? Because if we know the output and it has to be same, then it can be used anywhere, right? It can be used on server and all of that. So that is why purity is important. And also if the output is same, so why do we have to again and again fetch this thing? It can be cached, so it tries to improve the performance also. How is how and also how React checks if a component is pure or not, and how is the purity of it is maintained or not. So if you have written some React code, or if you have used any kind of frameworks, for example Vite or Next.js or anything, you would see that they wrap the whole app in a React.strict mode. React.strict mode. They try to wrap it inside it, okay? Not React. Yeah. So they wrap your whole app inside React.strict. What do we mean by that? And why is it wrapped around it? So basically, this React.strict mode checks the purity of your components. How does it check it? It basically renders the same component twice. For example, during the first render, if this is your component, and what would this do? It would render it first, and the output is 1. And then it would render it again. And if output is 1 again, that means it is pure, because every time it is giving the same output. But if initially the output was 1 and then the output was 2, then this means it is not pure function. So like this, it would check this. It is happening in the development phase. During the development phase, this React.strict mode works. When you push your code to the production side, this has no effect, and hence it would not lead to any performance issues. Okay, so this was about pure functions, use effect, side effects, and purity, why is it important, and how is it implemented in a modern day React, and all of that. So if anybody asks you these concepts, I hope we can answer them. So yeah, thank you. And sorry for the headphone glitch at the last. So sorry.